Don't consider whether you agree with the law or whatever. No, that's your duty and your right as a juror.
Exactly.
So when they left that up, he got completely acquitted, 12-0.
They want to take that away from us.
Yes.
That's why it's so important, you know, that you guys here at InfoWar continue to do your work, because we have to wake the people up and let the people know that you are in charge.
Yes.
You know, Obama's not in charge. None of these politicians are really in charge unless we give them their power. We give them all the power that they have, and they're supposed to be doing exactly what we tell them to do, not the agenda that some big corporation who's lacing their pocketbooks are telling them what to do, you know.
What would you tell the people in Baltimore, the young guys in Baltimore? You know, obviously they're frustrated. I'm frustrated. I mean, it's not just black people that are having this done to them.
I'll be going there pretty soon to give a lecture to them. And just right off the top, I would tell them that violence is not the way. You can't beat these people with guns because they've taken away all the guns from the citizens.
Yes.
They have the most powerful weapons in the world, and they have no problem with shooting you.
Mm-hmm.
And
as we see,
and it's going to be justified. You know, we see over and over again.
All they have to do is say that they were afraid for their life.
Even
Just
myself, you know, I was shot at running from the scene. Well, I had committed no crime that day. You know, I'd been selling drugs before, but that particular day, I absolutely had no guns. They shot at me 3 times.
Still, unless you are actually a threat to the life of the officer, the safety of the officer, unless you're running at him, or unless you're pointing a gun at him. If you're running away from him unarmed, they should not be allowed to shoot you in the back. I've taken concealed carry classes, and I understand what the law is for me as a citizen. When no one is threatening me, if somebody breaks into my house, I say, I've got a gun, and they turn around, they start running away, and I shoot them on my front lawn, I'm going to go to jail for manslaughter at the very least.
I agree. I totally agree. But I'm telling you from experience.
You've been there.
I've been shot at from running away from a scene. And not because I committed a crime, only because I've been threatened by the police that they had told my friends that they were going to kill me. I've also been handcuffed after I surrendered, got on my knees, put my hands on top of my head like this here. They cuffed me and went to assaulting me. These scars on my head is from police brutality while I was handcuffed. And I hadn't put up any struggle until after, you know, once they started hitting you so much, the pain gets so... what's the word for it? It gets so where you can't tolerate it anymore that you start to fight and move so you don't get hit here again. You rather get hit back here. So
it's just natural instinct. So you try to protect yourself, right? You're flinching, and then they say, "Oh, you're struggling." Okay?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, what would you tell them to do? What you would advise that they act as Martin Luther King told them in a demonstration rather than a riot. We've got that clip that Darren McBreen put together. He goes, this is a demonstration. This is a riot. If you can't tell the difference,
no. What we got to do is we got to become educated. You know, we got to start getting the information, just like what you guys here at InfoWar are doing. And I'm so glad that I became exposed to InfoWars at the time that I did and got educated, you know, and start to learn that if we think for ourselves, then we can do better. But when you don't know, a lot of times you think you're fighting and you're really playing right into the system's hands. You know, you go out and you shoot a police officer that's sitting in a car who did nothing to nobody, then that feeds into this brutal, dangerous.
It justifies it.
It justifies it in their mind that, yeah, we're doing the right things. So that's definitely not the right things to do. And burning up buildings is not going to fix anything. It's just going to tear up our neighborhoods. What we have to do is we have to sit down and come up with strategies and techniques to educate ourselves and put the people in power that's going to help us. Let
me ask you this, because the thing that concerns me when I see Al Sharpton get involved and others is they always turn this into something that is simply racial. They say this is simply against the black people. And of course, it is much higher in the black communities, no doubt about it. But when I look at this, what I see is a beta test for all of us, because the violence that is going on now, even though it is higher, we see increased levels of violence against all people, white people, pregnant women, white pregnant women, whatever. I mean, what has changed is the way the police react and are justified by the system in reacting to the public. And that's what really needs, and we need to come together instead of saying, well, this is a black problem. When they say that, that basically pushes the white people off the side. We got to come up with a break. I want to get your answer to that when we come back. How do we unify together, get everybody to understand that this is all of our problems? We have a problem with a police state. We have a problem with a surveillance state. We all need to come together, regardless of color, and fight this common tyranny. We'll be right back with Freeway Rick Ross. Stay with us. Wars.com, and it is a top seller at Amazon as well. It's an interesting read. It's something we're pointing out really ought to be read by a lot of kids in school.
Absolutely.
who are very poor and think that maybe the way they can get out of this is with the war on drugs, but it is a trap that has been set up by the government.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about the government's involvement in the crack cocaine business, as well as the Iran-Contra affair, because that was all part of it. That essentially brings these two justifications for our police state, for our surveillance state, the war on drugs, the war against terrorism, they say, brings that into perspective, because you can see in the Iran-Contra scandals that the government was running both sides of both of those wars, as they continue to do today, Rick.
Yeah, they.
Now, you're doing this book tour, and you've also got some websites we want to talk about, too. You've got, what is defyventures.org?
Well, it was funny. This company contacted me about 3 months ago, and they told me that they were interested in helping guys who had went to prison and got out, help them get on their feet by giving them training and helping them get loans to start businesses. And they said that they had pretty good luck, because one of the things they found out with drug dealers is that they had a tendency to stay with their business. They didn't start something and then quit. So they're the company. It's a company,
kind of entrepreneurs to start with, right?
Yeah. So it's a company that came up with the idea that if we start to help these guys start businesses, they won't go back to prison.
That's great.
So that's one of the companies that contacted me, and I'm working with them now.
And of course, your other websites are freewayrick.com. Yes. And IamTheRealRickRoss.com.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can go there and you can find out about both of those. That's very important, too. Somebody coming out of prison, they want to get their life back together. They like to go straight. They probably have got some organizational skills if they were successful at what they were doing.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the biggest things.
And a lot of times they just need a hand.
Yeah.
You know, Dave,
exactly.
You get out of prison, and I'm fortunate that I had a few people to help me. Beside my family, my family was in real bad shape when I got home. Themselves. You know, if you see the documentary, you'll see a couple months after I was out of prison, my mom got kicked out of her house behind the. Remember the mortgage scandal that went on where they was going out. My mom is 85 years old, and they came to her about a loan and loaned her $400,000, and she was like, "I never got $400,000." And
wow.
But anyway,
yeah, the banker scams. Yeah, that's part of what they're doing. Of course, they're running an even bigger scam right now, and that's this trade partnership where they're basically going to take everything from everybody across the world. But we've been talking about how they're negotiating that in secret. When you look at this and you look at the impact of the war on drugs, of course, one of the biggest things about that is breaking up families, destroying families with these mandatory minimums for people who are nonviolent offenders. I mean, not somebody.
The prison's full of us.
Exactly. You were a big-time dealer, and as we pointed out before, you had in today's dollars. Maybe
but with no violence.
That's
not an ounce of violence in my. The only violence I had that they say I had was when the police had beat me up and handcuffed me and shot at me.
Violence to you.
And then they said, "Well, he did all this, and that's why we did what we did to him."
Yeah, yeah.
But other than that, if you look at my arrest record, there's absolutely no violence in my jacket at all. The rest of my suspected crimes were all drugs.
Yes, and one of the things that I have a problem with is that at the same time that they created the civil asset forfeiture laws, which now they're using to just steal property from people left and right. At the same time they did that, they did the mandatory minimums, taking away, somebody could have been a first-time offender, maybe they were growing marijuana in their closet for their own personal use.
Marijuana.
Yeah, and because of the quantity, okay, it was a federal mandate about how long they would have to go to prison, and they were locking people who were nonviolent up in prison for such long periods of time. We had so much prison overcrowding that they were letting violent people out. That was a thing that really concerned me 20 years ago. I wasn't in the drug trade. I wasn't using drugs, but I was like, you're letting violent people out?
Well,
so
I saw a documentary on that.
Life?
Now that you mentioned, I saw a documentary on it where this guy was a homicide detective, right? Smart guy. But he said he stopped doing homicide because he could get better raises and higher promotions by going out looking for drug dealers.
Absolutely. That's where the focus was. That's They focused everything on that because that was what was going to give them power. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Freeway Rick Ross. We're going to talk about his experiences in prison, something that's going on right now in the corporate prisons you won't believe. But we're also going to talk about the Iran-Contra situation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.